Radhe Radhe. Today, Sunday, November 7th, 2021. Mommy, we're here to present a quick recap for everybody's benefit from our Bhagavad Gita study session.
Yes, Radhe Radhe everybody. And as we enjoyed the session, I hope you all also had good time. It was good to hear all your experiences. Very nice. Let's get back to the session material.
Yes, so as always, chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, Jnana Karma Sannyas Yog. And we, as always, started out with a quiz. We saw the word doubt again, doubt that we would like to instead convert or channel into faith. And a few other questions, matching pairs at the end. And then the two verses we covered, chapter 4, verse 7 and chapter 4, verse 8. Chapter 4, verse 7, if I take us to the ebook, very, very pivotal verse. In fact, we saw that also in the opening of the episodes for all of the Mahabharata TV serial that we displayed. And keyword really here is God is unborn. God isn't born like us as humans in a natural way. So there's a very important aspect of how he appears on earth. It is to do with manifest. Mommy, do you want to take us through that a little bit from a Sanskrit aspect?
Yes, a very important Sanskrit word, that is Srijamyaham. Srijamyaham, that means God manifests. God is not born like us human beings by his Yog Maya, by his divine power. God manifests himself in different avatars.
Yes. And in fact, avatar reminds me, in the commentary, we discussed that the Srimad Bhagavatam lists 24 divine descensions and avatars of God. But in fact, we also see that there are infinite, innumerable avatars since the beginning of eternity. In the context of avatars, we saw the 4 different categories. So Avesh avatar, Prabhavavatar, Vaibhavavatar, and Paravastavatar. In these 4, we went through the examples that Swamiji has provided. We talked about the differences briefly. We had a question also about what perhaps is different between the 2nd and the 4th categories. And really the 2nd one is with God in the personal form with some of the divine powers. In the 4th category, it's God in the personal divine form with all of the divine powers. So thank you to Daleji for that question and kind of pointing that out. And
so look at very important thing. In the 2nd one, it is personal form. In the 4th one, it is personal divine form. In 2nd one, in some of his divine powers. In the 4th one, it is all his divine powers. That is where we saw Shri Krishna take avatar, Shri Ram, and all their leelas, pastimes, to give us a connection with, to increase our bhakti quotient. That is how gods take avatar in personal divine form to give us loads of leelas, pastimes, so that we souls, ignorant souls, we can attach our mind to God through God's leelas.
Yes, absolutely true. And we also saw that God is perfect and complete. There was a quiz question related to last week's content on the Shanti mantra. But then here also from the Padma Puran, we see that same word, the key word, Purnaha. So all the dissensions of God are replete. I think to me, this is an important English word we see in these 2 verses, fully abundant with all the divine powers. And all these dissensions of God are perfect and complete, Purnaha. So that's really chapter 4, verse 7. Chapter 4, verse 8, we see that there were 2 reasons in chapter 4, verse 7 for God to manifest. So those reasons are decline in dharma or righteousness, and a corresponding increase in adharma or unrighteousness. So now chapter 4, verse 8, that third reason for God's divine descension is to help re-establish dharma. I think, Mom, for re-establish, you had some important word as well.
Yes, it's a very, very important word. Dharma sansthapanarthaya. Dharma sansthapanarthaya. That means God takes avatar to re-establish dharma.
Yes. And what we encourage you to go back and do as well is to, as always, read the translation and commentary multiple times, but specifically for chapter 4, verse 8, try to read these 3 paragraphs here, the 3 different bullet points for why God descends on earth, in conjunction with the expanded version on the next page, which is where Swamiji provides convincing arguments for why God has to, in fact, take those avatars or descensions. Because again, in the early part of his commentary, Swamiji says the 3 reasons by themselves are not very convincing. But again, as Mummy said, from a bhakti standpoint, Swamiji helps elucidate for us that it is the divine leelas being associated with God's names, forms, pastimes, virtues, and abodes to help us participate in those to increase our devotion and our bhakti quotients. That is why God, in fact, does descend, so that we get those opportunities. And in turn, God is able to re-establish dharma.
And very importantly, Gagan, you reminded us of Nam, Roop,
Yes.
Nam, Roop, Leela, Gun, Dham.
Yep.
These 5 words are very important in Hindi version, or very important in Maharajji's lectures. He mentions these again and again, that God descends to establish the dharma, and then he provides us souls with all these names, forms, pastime, virtues, and abodes, so that through these leelas, we can get a feel and we can attach our minds to God.
Absolutely. And purify our minds as we go about all that.
Yes.
So in fact, speaking of Leelas, we again see conjunctions, tie-ups with, Vrindavan and Braj. We talked about the gopis and gopas. And in fact, as it happens to be, as we speak right now, the Govardhan Puja celebrations taking place at the Radha Krishna temple in Allen. And in fact, Govardhan, the hill, the stone, the mountain, we also saw an example here of a different kind of stone, Lord Ram providing redemption to one soul, as mentioned in the Ramayana. And that was Ahalya, one of the Panch Kanyas. So as always with the different scriptures, so many interconnected themes and stories that weave their way one through the other.
So in these 2 verses, actually, there are lots of stories hidden. So maybe, sometime later in, once we are done with more verses, we can once in a while do a little story here and there. At the same time, I would recommend many of you who have been today, like we talked about the Mahabharat videos. So if you watch those Mahabharat videos, lots of stories are shown there also. So they are also very helpful, right, Gagan?
Yes, absolutely. And we discussed briefly some of the background items for like Ravan and Kumkaran as well, Jaya, Vijaya, Shishupal, Dantavakra, Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyaksh. And likewise for chapter 4, verse 7, very briefly, the various avatars, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narsingh, and so on. So just a little bit of background information.
So maybe, Gagan, let's do like this. Maybe quickly give those stories. You told about Matsya Avatar, Kurma, Varaha. That will help everybody.
Yeah, certainly. So I'll just go in order. We talked about Sage Narad. I think everybody has heard of him, of course, and he's considered the first journalist of the world, and kind of pitted characters one against the other, but for everybody's spiritual benefit. Everybody's familiar with Lord Buddha, the 23rd of the 24 avatars mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we have this example here for a very short amount of time, the Hans avatar. So this is when Brahma, his 4 sons born of his mind, the 4 Kumars, they had pitted some very strong, difficult questions to him on the mind and the gunas. And that's when Brahma needed help. So Lord Vishnu descended as a swan. So Hans avatar to help address those questions and then go back. The longer version of this second category, Prabhava avatar, is Vedvyas. Everybody is certainly familiar with him, the splitter of the Vedas, compiler of the Mahabharata and the Purans. And then in the third category, Matsya avatar, Matsya is to do with fish. So this is the fish form, the avatar of Lord Vishnu that saved earth from a great flood. Kurma avatar, some of you may be familiar from the churning of the ocean story, Samudra Manthan. And this is where Lord Vishnu was that very, very stable tortoise on which, the entire churning was kind of performed with the stick and the rope being a snake, actually Nag. And then Vara avatar is the half boar version. This is where there was earth dragged way underneath the waters. And this was by a demon, Hiranyaksh, who was in fact the twin brother of Hiranyakashipu. Again, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksh were manifestations or avatars of Ravan and Kumkaran, in turn Jaya and Vijaya. So this half-boar version, Vara avatar, helped save the earth and bring it back above to the surface of the waters. The fourth category, of course, everybody is familiar with Sri Krishna and Sri Ram. The last example given is Narsingh avatar, so the half-lion version. This is related to Hiranyakashipu, the other demon, and he was the father of Prahlad, a very great devotee of Lord Vishnu. Prahlad had been challenged by his father, Hiranyakashipu, to try and prove that God actually exists everywhere. In fact, Hiranyakashipu kicked a stone pillar or an iron pillar and wanted to prove to Prahlad that God doesn't exist in a pillar, for instance. And that's when, in fact, God emerged from that pillar as this Narsingh avatar and vanquished Hiranyakashipu and saved Prahlad. So that's a quick run through of the various avatars.
Yes, very enlightening. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I think the last thing I'll mention, so Mummy, you mentioned here, I think forms, the word is Roop. To me, that always rings a bell, Roop Dhyan. And is there something covered today in conjunction with Govardhan Puja that comes to mind?
Yes, today we had a very beautiful meditation. And we all, at least I enjoyed it very much. And I think Dale had also messaged that she enjoyed it. So that Roop Dhyan, to see the whole Leela of Sri Krishna, how he saved all the people of Braj from the incessant rains that God Indra poured on Braj, and how everybody then feels so much more devotion towards God. And today, same thing is going to be picturized in our temple when they are going to do Govardhan Puja with Swamiji. So then it's called Govardhan Puja. At the same time, then we say it Annakut. Annakut means all the food offerings made to Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna, as a young boy, he carried that mountain on his left hand little finger and protected the whole Brajvasis for 7 days. Imagine. But natural, that little boy was famished. And then everybody, with all their love and all their devotion, they cooked lots of foods for Krishna. And we call them Chappan Bhog also. So, and today, same feeling actually I also got, because till date I had never heard this word famished. I could never imagine that Krishna as a young boy did this. I knew he did it, but I always thought he had innumerable powers. So never thought that Krishna would be famished. So today when I also woke up at 3:30 in the morning and tried to make some few dishes bhog for Krishna, I think for the first time in my life, I had all that devotion where they teach us in Bhagavad Gita that you do cooking for the pleasure of God. So today, all my feelings were there when I was cooking. And I think all of us, we can join back at radhakrishnatemple.net.live to watch that whole Leela. They have made a very beautiful statue of Krishna carrying the whole mountain. And with Swamiji, it is going to be full of bhakti and devotion and love.
Very touching to hear, Mummy, the whole preparation of your offerings as part of Annakut and Chapan Bhog. And as you said, I hope everybody can take part in the celebrations at the temple. Final thoughts next week and the week after?
Yeah, so next week we are all going to be in the retreat. Those who are here, they will join physically, and those who cannot join physically, they are going to be online. And my humble request to all of you is to please join the retreat. It's an awesome, once in a lifetime kind of experience with Swamiji. The retreat is just, for 2.5 days, you are totally disconnected with this world. And if you are not able to do it 24 hours, still, whatever time you have, try to join. Swamiji is going to give lectures on chapter 12, that is Bhakti Yog. So it is going to be out of this world experience. So we will not be having our class next week. So we will be meeting you on what date, Gagan? You
21st.
Can remind me?
21st. Yep.
21st of November. Right?
Absolutely right. Yep. With that, hopefully that's a helpful recap of today. Again, look forward to meeting everybody online, at least in the retreat next week.
And
so the session 2 weeks from now. Thank you. Radhe,
thank
Radhe.
you. Radhe, Radhe.